Hi guys, Harry here from Virtua, and today for this session of Virtua Talks Metaverse, I'm joined by Anthony and Jobe. And today we're going to be talking about the metaverse and specifically virtual real estate in the metaverse. We've got some research coming out in the near future, which has some really interesting findings. So this is to kind of run alongside that body of research. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm going to kick off with the first question, and that is, what's got you excited about the metaverse?
I guess I can start with that one. So I'll be honest, like before, I didn't really know what the metaverse really was going to provide. And so I found Virtua just through my connection with Cardano, just looking at what Virtua has been offering kind of on the videos and through the Discord, and really got me interested of like, okay, why is a metaverse important at all? I started learning about, this gaming kind of idea, and also started dreaming about, oh yeah, this might be kind of a replacement of browsers or things like that. Maybe this is the new way you actually interact from companies and things like that. So it really got me interested in thinking like, what are all the pieces that are really there that really need to connect to get this to work? And it seemed like every time I had a thought in my mind, I was watching another video with Virtua, and they're explaining kind of the same thing I was thinking, saying, yeah, we're already thinking about that, already kind of 2 steps ahead in that process. And it really got me excited, just kind of going through that space. So that really what got me into for the first place. So
awesome. Joe, what are your thoughts?
A big part is, as what Anthony mentioned, right? It could be the new layer of communication like what we had with browsers. Particularly for myself, me and my gang, we've been playing around with various worlds, and sometimes we do get involved with the fiat side of things, but obviously to do that, it's very messy. When it comes to if the metaverse is going to be what it's jacked up to be, and these different worlds can sort of interact, and you have sovereign asset ownership, then there might be platforms where we can interact between these various worlds. And so for me, the part that interests me the most is the digital economies that can come up from these, right? I think depending on what's popular, you're gonna have movement of assets from one world to another and things like that. So that's the part that really gets to me. And me and my gang have been into this for so long. We're looking forward to something like that.
It's interesting, as you say, people that are into video games, they know the space, so often are you dealing with kind of in-game currencies that you get used to kind of digital currencies. And I think that's definitely been an element into the adoption of cryptocurrency as a whole. Anthony, are you a gamer as well? Is that something that got you into the metaverse?
Yeah, so I am a gamer. I've gamed most of my life, and so same. World of Warcraft, Guild Wars, a lot of those. The thing for me, because in-game currency is one thing, because you need the in-game currency to buy things within the game, and so when you're talking about metaverse more in the real world. I always have that struggle. So like kind of to go back to like PlayStation Home. So PlayStation Home tried to make this place where people can kind of interact and you can buy clothes and things like that. But you saw like as that whole community died, the clothes you bought, all that things that you received, you can't migrate it anywhere else. So you ended up just kind of wasting your money in this place. And so it's really interesting to me to try to figure out how do you interact in a metaverse, give you kind of that your assets that you actually own, but still be able to use them, more practically. Having your digital avatar is one thing, but also having a real presence. I really like kind of like what the Kevin Hart is trying to do with the tickets. So now your NFT becomes kind of a ticket for a real life event and things like that. So that's really interesting to me. Now you really start softening that tie between a virtual world and the real world. And now your assets actually do have value. To answer your question, yes, I'm a heavy gamer, very competitive. And so
awesome. Yeah, it's definitely, I think interoperability is almost like the holy grail of the metaverse. That's what everybody wants to crack, as Jobe was saying, being able to bring over currencies and, move them from one place to another. And that's gradually becoming a reality that, that we will all be able to take advantage of and enjoy. next up, I got the question, do you think, what we're seeing in some of our research is Gen Z, they're really, hot on moving into the metaverse, adopting it as a practice. And it's something that's, maybe a generational thing. Do you think that's true? Do you think, some generations are going to pick up the metaverse probably quicker than others? Jobe, you want to come in on this one?
Yeah, sure. I definitely think the younger generation is much more flexible at picking this up. I've been watching I have a couple of grandnephews in Australia who I watched play Minecraft, and they were like 8, 9 years old, and they were doing stuff in it that, I wouldn't definitely. I was like catching bugs in the garden at that age, and these guys, running around comfortably, and they have no problem. So I think yes, the younger generations, they are definitely much more able to interact. Their brains are easily adapted to this because that's what they've grown up with. As I said, right, they're my grandnephew, so I'm from a couple of generations back, and my gang is all around my age, and we're all right with it. But in a general sense, of course, I think my generation is going to have a lot less people who's going to wrap their minds around this.
Absolutely. Anthony, do you think the same?
Yeah. So for me, I'm thinking more from Gen Z. They really took over ownership of the social media thing. The TikToks and things like that came out. They just jump on it. I still trying to catch up a little bit on some of what that means or when to use TikTok versus Facebook versus Instagram. I don't really know kind of when, but it's cool that they really kind of made these social interactions. And so like they're making these places where they can make a community and discuss. And I think that's something that the older generations really don't have. Like the community is really, hey, go into a store and meeting them, or go into a bar and meeting people. But just kind of thinking of that question, I remember watching a comedian actually said his son basically had a girlfriend and was saying, hey, I have a girlfriend, and he's like, oh yeah, like how long you been dating? He's like, yeah, for a month. And he's like, so, have you seen each other? Like, what's been going on? He's like, no, we've never met. He's like, oh, you've never met. And so it's really kind of interesting that there's people that really communicate online. That's all they do. And so the metaverse is another way of really allowing that interaction communication wise. And so I think they've taken it on. It's really hard for older generations to kind of jump in and say, hey, I'm going to meet somebody I really don't know. They may not even look like that. But I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to catch on and maybe gain some of that traction.
Yeah, I think so. Like the metaverse is such a great space as well, because a lot of people can find their tribe, they can find their community. It's not, you just got to hang out with whoever lives on your street or lives in your town, or you can go and find somebody who's into whatever you're into and you can connect like that. And yeah, it's another kind of thing that came up in our research was kind of like the emotional attachment and the kind of emotional relationships you can build in the metaverse, or for gamers like us guys, that you first get in the chat function, then you start playing with someone on a regular basis, then you realize you're sort of connecting with people on a day-to-day basis more so than some people that you connect with in physical in the physical world. And it's going to be exciting to see how that once we get the haptics, once we get the VR, once people can go into this space, that's kind of the next level, which is super exciting.
Yeah. Also, just to kind of talk to that a little bit, I know, a lot of people are waiting for, when we get the technology where we can teleport or get to be able to hang out with people faster. So, in the metaverse, especially with VR, you now can actually play, like I could play ping pong with you without having to leave my house and things like that. So these things where you have to be physically there start to slowly drop. I mean, you can't like touch or do anything like that, but at least you have that experience kind of like you would in a real life. So I think that's something that's starting to change as well.
I think that's a good point, right? It's beyond just chatting right now. Actually being able to do stuff with other folks as well. And that really is kind of nice. Although I do see some pushback on the metaverse saying that that's the doom of humanity, where we're gonna forget about what it's like to have real interactions. But I don't think that's the case, right? For anyone who's played like MMOs or online games for a while, it doesn't mean that we can't have a real world life, but you can still have fun in the virtual world as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a few conversations about how, these things are going to complement each other. The metaverse isn't going to replace, physical real life. It's something that you can do alongside, which is an important point, which I think sometimes can be missed. Let's talk about virtual property, digital real estate. Obviously, Virtua recently did its project Cardano Island that I know you guys have been involved with. So first up, what interests you about virtual property? Anthony, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So for me, virtual property has always been kind of questionable. It's like, all right, I'm going to get this thing. I can't really live in it. I don't know if it's going to last forever. But what interests me in Virtua is the fact that the property actually does have utility. It's really one of the first projects that I saw that there is a utility, like, you can gain resources, and these resources allow you to build things with these bots, and these bots now, these resources can be used for something that could be used potentially in the game or potentially in real life, depending on whatever it is. But you need these things to kind of build up that. And that really interests me. Just kind of seeing how that would all play together and fit. So wanted to at least have a piece of that just to kind of make sure I'm not, missing something from there. So the utility is really what brought me in initially. I think a lot of these other projects are good, but, having the thing where you just own something that you don't really know if people would use, not quite there yet, but as long as there's something that is up front that I can kind of see, hey, this will have value in the future, makes me kind of excited. So
I kind of take a slightly different view on that. I do agree with Anthony. I'm definitely in it because I do want to be part of it and see where this goes, because it's all like experiments at the moment. Every version of a metaverse is an experiment. I particularly like the world builder type of metaverses where it allows you to express. Out of all the games that I've played, my favorite by far has been Minecraft, right? And I even participated in some other Minecraft derivative crypto worlds. It's a NFT in Wax. I think it was called Uplift. Right, I bought a plot there, and it's kind of nice that you own it and you can build on it. I like that aspect of the metaverse, but when it comes to Virtua, I'll be frank, I'm in it because I'd like to see where it goes. I like the idea of resources and being able to trade the resources. I still don't know what the long-term plan of the resources are, so that to me there's a bit of a question mark. If it's going to be a resource that's gamified and it forces you to trade to then use those resources to build other NFTs that have other utilities and value, that's really fun and interesting. But the risk of that is that the rules of consuming these resources then fall back to Virtua, right? And basically it becomes a game where what you do with the resources, you have gold in World of Warcraft. What do you do with it, right? And if the game developers don't do a good job in giving you a narrative to really get it interesting to participate in that economy, it is exposed to the same kind of risk that other games are in. It's how good is your game right now? And I like that Virtua has resources. I would love to see the what we can finally do with the resources. I kind of wonder if it's going to be forcing us to interact with other blockchain metaverses that generate their own resources. And then from gathering all of these up, do we build other things? And does this give us real world utility or things like that? Would love to see more. From the gaming perspective, I think there's a lot more risk in terms of it really depends on the game developer building up the law or the narrative of the game to be interesting and fun, right? And I think all games suffer from that. Metaverse and not.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's certainly, well, I've seen the roadmap for what's coming in Virtua, and there is a tremendous amount on its way. And I can't wait for everybody in the community to see that as well. And I think, Joe touched on some really interesting points around there and around, what's the value exchange in a game. You want to make sure you're enjoying yourself, and that's kind of like why we all game is for entertainment. And then there's a new layer once you add it into the metaverse, once you add NFTs, once you add digital ownership. There's a lot that's going to go into making sure that there's still a value exchange of enjoyment or something else. And we're really at the kind of forefront of that conversation right now. You look at Axie Infinity as an example of really led the way in the P2E space, but tremendous amount of learnings can be taken away from the successes and some of the failings of that particular game. And we're all kind of excited, and we all just can't wait to see what's going to happen. But particularly in the Virtua space, it's looking like a really, really good project. I'm obviously biased, but it does look exciting.
I would like to add in, because there was a phrase mentioned in there that I particularly am concerned about. Again, personal bias, but that concept of play to earn, because it's a very fine line, right? If your game is fun and play to earn is a sub property of your game, that's fine. But if play to earn becomes the primary reason for people to participate in your ecosystem, then everyone participating in your ecosystem is just there to extract value, right? They are earning, they need to pull resources out in order to make profit. If P2E becomes the primary reason everyone is there, then who is inputting value if everyone's extracting value, right? You really do need to make sure that there are people who are interested in participating in the ecosystem to add value before you can even consider having a play-to-earn environment to extract value. Otherwise, you're just going to drain your resources, and then what? I think Axie Infinity is going to be one of those that are facing that as more, people are joining it just to earn. So where's the money coming from, right? If the play-to-earn is your primary driver, it's probably not a good sign, in my opinion, right? It has to have its own 2 feet to stand on. It has to be fun and engaging.
Absolutely. And we were a little bit sidetracked there in terms of talking about digital property, but that was really interesting to hear anyway. But just drawing it back a sec to how do you think digital property compares to physical property? Is there a correlation? Are they completely different things now in people's minds?
Yeah, I think they're pretty different. In my mind, physical property is something that you have to have in order to, actually survive, have, kitchen, bed, comfort, security. A lot of people kind of expect that. And so, even to get into these digital worlds, you probably need to be in a safe environment in the first place, whether that's, you go to a hub or like maybe like a virtual arcade or something like that. And that's where you kind of get into your metaverse, or you go in your own house and have a room kind of carved out from there. So I think physical property is kind of here to stay. It's something real that people can touch and things like that. Digital property, I think, is something that is still very experimental. So I remember, back in the day with Ultima Online, Ultima Online used to have houses that, you can buy. And that was kind of a big thing from there. And so people that played the game heavily wanted a house, and it kind of earned value just because the game was so popular at the time. Now, there's a lot of speculation. So yes, you can buy land, but, a lot of these lands you're buying, the actual game is not out yet. So sure, you have the NFT, you can see the NFT, but you can't really physically do anything with it yet. So I think over time, once we start making, what these houses and actually do, where if you have fan caves, then you can put all your NFTs on the wall, or maybe have some arcades and people can join it. Now it starts becoming interesting because, like, to me, the value comes more in the sellability for businesses, because I can see, like, if you have Best Buy or something, Best Buy says, hey, I want to have a metaverse land, and I put basically my store there. And so now you can go and see all their products in the store and touch it and things like that. People can go to the land whenever they feel like it, maybe go to JCPenney's or whatever is around. That becomes interesting now, because now they're actually making a stake in a place that's popular, and people want to do that. So from a business side, I see a lot of value. From a personal side, I'm still kind of struggling to see the full value from there. But again, we're still early, so my mind can be changed over time. So
yeah, no, I think Anthony said pretty much everything that was in my head as well. It's fairly different, right? Digital property right now is so speculative. It's almost like it is a gamble almost. And of course, when you bring in the idea of businesses, right? Physical movement in the metaverse is fairly different from physical landed property. Like you could have something popular in the real world, and then you get these businesses that build up around it. Whereas in the digital world, you don't need to have a 20,000 square foot building. You could just have a portal. So you'd have like many businesses trying to crowd around what's popular in the in the metaverse. So I think that's going to change things around a lot. But the honest answer is I don't know, and it is fairly different. In the digital world is speculative. In the physical world, at least you know how businesses are going to interact with it. No idea how it's going to be in the digital world. So yeah, different.
We'll see. What do you do with your properties that you've acquired at this time?
So you're talking more about like the properties that we own.
Yeah, the digital properties, the virtual real estate that you own. Is it in a portfolio? Are you keeping an eye on it?
Yeah. So right now, I mean, the only two I've actually have is Virtua and Clay Nation. Both of them are still kind of working, so I haven't been able to really do anything in the ones I own at the moment, but been just kind of keeping up with them and trying to see kind of what the future is. So I'm not sure if Jobe has some more.
I think I'm in a lot of the Cardano metaverses. I jumped around in the Decentraland metaverses. Sometimes I've met some folks in there. But what am I planning to do with it? The Cardano side of metaverses are still all in development. I guess I have two types of bags that I'm considering. One is the gamified version of things, the more gamified versions like Virtua, where you have resources and how you're planning to get people excited about using it. And then there's the other one that I'm really interested in is, of course, the world builder type, similar to Pavia, right, where you can build and import your own expressions and your own property and build things in it. I guess both of them, we can't really tell what the final evolution of them are going to look like. But if it's for building, I'm definitely planning to build on my metaverses, my metaverse lands. I would love to have my own virtual spaces for my gang to meet up on. I think that's probably the biggest part, because from a Minecraft environment, right? You wanna be able to chill with your buddies and meet up and actually do things. I would want to build on it. For things like Virtua, where it's more gamified, then of course I want to participate in the economy far more than the hanging out. But if there's an option for hanging out on the horizon, then yeah, I'd like to check that out. How customizable are your VFlex? Can I get a beard in it? And things like that. I'm big on making sure my PFPs are matching up to me.
Well, actually, there's so much scope there, and as you say, things are, we're at an interesting point in the life cycle of metaverses, especially on Cardano and Cardano associated metaverses. But Joe, maybe this one's for you. I've got a question here. Do you enjoy being part of metaverse communities? I know that you've mentioned your gang a few times. Is that community spirit and being able to be part of a community a big thing for you?
Yeah. It is. Really, it is. A lot of my IRL friends and close buddies actually started off by us gaming in in what the original version of metaverses were, right? MMOs and things like that. We used to have Ragnarok Guild Wars and things like that. And eventually we met up in real life and formed really good friendships. And over time, it grew. And I think that's just going to be the case as more and more people start to participate in these metaverse communities. I see the value in being part of these communities, mainly because the friendships you form, and mind you, not only IRL friends, right? We also have people like you guys mentioned, right, that we've never met in our lives, but we consider good friends as well. Like we meet them online and be like, hey, let's go for a raid and whatever. And I think that's immensely satisfying. It doesn't take away from IRL experiences at all.
Yeah, I think having communities is really what online game is about. I mean, I remember when I first played my first MMORPG, and it's just one of those things where you're like, hey, you're actually talking to real people. I remember like back in the day, we used to play over dial-up connection, just 1-to-1, and just having that one-on-one was interesting. And I was always like, wow, can't I have a 3 players? And then it was like 8 players, and I was like, wow, this is great. And then MMO was like, oh wow, we just blown up and have a whole slew of people just around. And so I really enjoy that. As far as like my play style, I do like to find people in the game that I have a lot of commonalities with, and then after I hang out with them, maybe make a guild or things like that. But typically kind of game to game, I haven't been kind of an in real life meetup person for the people I meet in the game, unless I just happen to know them and we're just having to play the same game. So like typically the games I'm in, like Guild Wars or Ragnarok, like you mentioned, I have different guilds and communities from there, but they don't really interact. We don't typically go back and forth because they're very different and they have kind of a different play style. So treat them a little different, but I do love the communities from there. So as far as kind of my own community, I'm not sure if I'm probably in that kind of space, but I'm sure I will have a community that I'll probably interact with within Virtua as well. So
awesome. Right. And now we're on to my final question. And that's, what do you think is the future of the metaverse, Jobe?
It is going to be where we interact a lot. I think not only for friendly stuff, for work as well. It's getting to a point, if you play around with some of the virtual meetup spaces, I think, what was it? Horizon Workrooms beta came out. And, we're playing around in it. And it's actually quite cool to be able to meet up with a bunch of people, who use your whiteboard in game, in the environment, share a screen. So, on one hand, you're going to have a lot of, for me, the metaverse is going to be a lot about community building and people meeting up in the virtual space for both work and play and interaction. Before we go on, I did want to, something that come to mind, right? The difference over time in how we interacted with our online communities did change. Like back in the day when maybe World of Warcraft came around, before you had Discord and voice chat, for example, right? And everything was via text, and it was a lot less interactive, but things have changed over time. And where we're going with the current definition of the new metaverse, where we can sort of interact, the amount of surface interaction that you have with each other is going to change so much that it adds that much more value. It's the same reason why you chat via WhatsApp versus how we're doing it on camera right now. There's so much more information that passes through between us just because there's video. And now there's going to be video expressions, emotions, and things like that can also be communicated. So the more surface of communication you have, I think the more people are going to get comfortable interacting in that space. So yeah, the future is going to be where we interact a lot, with a lot more people around the world, borderless.
Yeah, I think you're dead right. Anthony, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, I think the metaverse is inevitable. I don't think everybody quite knows what it's going to look like in 10 years, but I think in 10 years, everybody's going to be like, oh yeah, this is like the internet before people knew the internet was something that people actually cared about, and not just a nerd name or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I mean, from the metaverse side, I mean, as Joe mentioned about kind of AR and VR, because like I think there is going to be a component of where you can still be in the real world and have interactions with virtual people inside of your space, and then also you have your own space where you're completely in a whole virtual world in a whole different place from there. So what the metaverse is, I think that definition keeps evolving, but I think it all relies on that community. And you're basically making this aspect where people can connect and talk and interact in a way that we never could before. Browsers never had interactions, unless you had to talk about chat rooms, but is that really interactive or just kind of an annoyance that people just close whenever they see it pop open? Before, in real life, I can go to a store and walk around. In the metaverse, I can do the same thing now. That's something I really couldn't do before. So if these big companies want to start interacting with that, and that becomes kind of a standard. Now you're like, oh, if you don't want to talk to people, go to a browser. If you want to interact with people who are in the store, you can come here and go to different stores and talk to people. Now you're talking about, hey, I can meet up with people just like people meet up in the mall and try to find new friends. I can go on a metaverse store and just for the pure, not to shop, but on the pure aspect of meeting people and interacting and trying to form communities from there. So I think it just changes the whole game. And as we play with these different things, we're going to make new words, new terms, new interactions. So it's exciting. And I think everybody has different ideas. And as those ideas just come together, we're going to make something really nice. So.
Absolutely, I totally agree. We're just getting started, and it's exciting, and we'll see where it goes. But yeah, I think we're really on the verge of something special. Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you. This is great.
And guys, thanks for watching. Much. No problem. And guys, thanks for watching Virtua Talks Metaverse. Look forward to the next time. See you later.